Good morning, everyone. We're here today to explore the concept of basic income and its potentialities in the unique context of Auroville. Let's begin with a short introduction. Auroville is an international township that is located in the state of Tamil Nadu in southern India. It is a community that was founded in 1968, and over the course of the past 50 years, the community has grown to around 3,000 members from 56 different countries. Auroville is a community that strives to achieve human unity and create unity and diversity. What does that mean? Good question. Aurovillians are still trying to figure that out. And Aurovillians are still in the process of manifesting this vision into reality. I don't want to linger on here for too long because we could talk about Auroville philosophy for months. We're not here for that today. So let's jump to the ideal of Auroville in terms of how its economy should be structured. So the mother envisioned a moneyless economy. And what does that mean? It's a good question, right? I want to highlight here two of the main efforts that have been done in Auroville to move towards this direction and vision. Firstly, the cashless transactions that are made possible through the financial services account. So each community member is assigned a 4 to 6 digit number with which he or she can use to access goods and services. So this is how it looks in reality. I walk into La Terrace, a very popular cafe in Auroville, and there's a blue sheet at the counter, and I can put down my assigned 4 digits and then the amount that I spent, and then sign it off, and that's how you pay for your coffee. It is a very honor and trust-based system, right? But its main purpose is to reduce the number of visible cash transactions within Auroville. And secondly, we have the provision of in-kind services. But hold up, what is meant by in-kind? Good question. So Auroville's maintenance system can provide an insight on this regard. So maintenance in the context of Auroville can be also understood as salary. And why call it maintenance? Well, the choice is justified by its purpose, right? The maintenance is supposed to be a means, the amount that a community member uses to live and to maintain a very basic and conscious lifestyle that is not luxurious nor very greed-driven. So I think that is at least the way I understood it. Yeah. So Auroville's full maintenance currently consists of 20,000 rupees that can be broadly categorized into 3 components. So first, we have the cash component, which makes up 1/4 of the full maintenance. It's 5,000 Indian rupees that you can withdraw in cash, so in actual touchable, smellable Indian rupee notes at the financial services. So why is that important? When Auroville is striving to be a moneyless community, why bring moneyless and cashless society? Why give people the access to cash? Well, very simple. Because no matter how big Auroville grows as a community, it wouldn't get to a point where it can provide its own network or internet network or petrol. So cash is necessary to allow community members to have access to goods and services outside of Auroville. Second, we have half of the full maintenance that is in kind, right? So it is an amount that is allocated to providing essential services such as health fund, lunch provision, and the PTDC contribution. And in this in-kind component, there's also the Auroville contribution, which is around 3,500 rupees. Contribution in the context of Auroville could be understood as taxation in the real world. Yeah. Last but not least, we have the in-kind plus, as I've come to understand it, is the remaining amount in the full maintenance that serves as the Auroville credit, right? It's the store credit that you could use to access goods and services within the local economy. So that's what I use to pay my coffee at La Terrace or to buy a shirt at Upasana. So let's get back into reality. Auroville, in very short, simple terms, strives to be a community that covers the basic needs of its community members. Beautiful in theory and very idealistic. How does it look in reality? Who better to ask than Aurovillians? And we did. Earlier this year, we conducted a survey and managed to receive around 150 respondents. The first question we asked was, do you believe that the community should cover the basic needs of every Aurovillian? And an overwhelming 98% said yes, but within that group, a third said only for those in need. Why is this insight so relevant? It's because it provides the philosophical foundation on which basic income can be explored and applied. Hold up. What is basic income? I mean, this is what we're here to explore today, right? So universal or unconditional basic income, UBI, is a concept that is being explored around different parts of the world to replace the conventional traditional welfare system. So it has 5 main dimensions. Let's go through it step by step. It's a periodic, so monthly or annual, cash payment, and here don't be alarmed by the word cash, right? Cash doesn't necessarily have to be the Indian rupees, in notes, or the US dollars in notes. It can be anything that serves as an adequate medium of exchange, right? It's a cash payment that is given to individuals, so there's no groupings, everyone gets one. You get one, you get one, you get one, as Oprah says. And it's universal. There's a no means test. And what that means is there's no rigorous financial background check, whether you're poor or rich. And lastly, it is unconditional. There's no requirement to work. So many different dimensions, it seems all quite complex. But in very simple layman's terms, it means free money for y'all. Free money for each and every one of you sitting in this room. As you can imagine, there have been people who've been very skeptical, who've really scrutinized this concept, and rightfully so. What if people take advantage? What if people get lazy and stop working? What if people buy drugs and cigarettes with this money that they're given? But I think what's more interesting is to start understanding why are people exploring this? Why now, right? So there are 3 main schools of thought, the way I've come to see it. So firstly, we have, in more developing countries, UBI as a tool to alleviate poverty, right? So India, in recent years, has conducted a UBI pilot project in the state of Madhya Pradesh, where people in different villages were given unconditionally 500 Indian rupees every month for a duration of, I believe, around 2 years. And the results were overwhelmingly positive and very promising. Especially amongst the women, they finally felt that they could have a sense of self-dignity, that now that they had access to a certain income, they had a voice in regards to how the household should be run, and that they actually had money that they could choose to do whatever they want with, whether it be to get a lipstick or to save and get a cow, right? So another school of thought is, okay, in more developing countries, in developed countries, such as Finland and Canada, where poverty is not at the center of society, why use UBI? Why give unconditional support, financial support to people, right? Well, it's easy. It's to tackle the issue of a bullshit job. What does a bullshit job look like? What does it mean? Yeah. Okay. Well, a bullshit job is any job that you wake up in the morning and walk into because you need something, some money to feed yourself at the end of the day. It's not a job that you wake up smiling and thinking, wow, I'm so grateful to be able to contribute and engage in this topic. It's not something that's fulfilling or empowering, right? It's a job that exists simply for the purpose of giving people income, right? So we don't want to live in a society where meaningless jobs exist so that people can buy bread at the end of the day. We want a society where everyone can wake up and feel like they have something to contribute, that they have their voice matters, and that their talent and their potential could be explored, right? And to be able to do that, to foster this kind of society, you need to give people certain means to cover their basic needs so that they're not constantly on survival mode. That when certain needs such as accommodation, so a roof over your head, water, food can be covered, they finally have this time and the space to really pursue things that are of interest to them. So recently, my colleague and I had the opportunity to attend the World Basic Income Congress in Hyderabad. And there we met Jessie, one of the Canadian recipients of the Basic Income Pilot project there. And she received unconditionally Canadian dollars per month for a duration of 1 year. And she said that she could go from having 4 jobs, struggling with 4 jobs to make ends meet, to having finally the time and space to pursue her dream of being a full-time freelancing photographer. So another school of thought is automation. So there are advocates in the Silicon Valley movement that say, advocates such as Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, that say, look, technology is advancing at an alarmingly fast rate due to artificial intelligence, machine learning, that jobs are disappearing. Manual labor is no longer needed, right? There are certain tasks that can be just automated. So what happens now to those group of people that no longer have jobs? Because labor is so strongly linked to income, right? Without a job, you don't have money. And when you have no income, you have no means to cover for your basic needs. So these advocates strongly support the delinking of labor and income. That even though you're not working, every person in a society should have the means to cover their needs, right? To survive. You can understand it as using the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the very bottom tier, we have physical needs that need to be covered. So whether you have a job or not, it is up to the society that we live in, like to provide, to make sure that these people will never be fighting to survive, regardless of whether they're having a job or not. So yeah, let's now get back into reality. So how does UBI play a role in Auroville? It's simple. The philosophy of UBI and the philosophy of Auroville align neatly, at least to the extent that both strive to cover the basic needs of individuals. But what are basic needs? Good question. Let's make a distinction here, right, between absolute basic needs and relative basic needs. So what are some absolute needs for you? Water, very good. Entertainment, very good. Entertainment, I'm joking. Yes, clothing, of course. Shelter, very good. So yes, again, getting back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's the physical needs, right? It's things that we really need to survive, right? That really taps into the idea of what is basic. And then what are some relative needs? Okay, your cell phone, yeah. For some people, for you, a cell phone can be a basic need. For me, not so much, right? Very good. Well, I would like to just say here that relative needs are needs that are very tied to the individual. It may be basic for me, but not basic for you, right? So here we have to ask the question, let's be serious. Is it a need or is it a want? So I want to highlight here that absolute needs are needs that should be covered by a community, by a society, by a country, whereas relative needs are needs that are how do you say, dependent on the individual, and that it really does require a consciousness and some kind of awareness regarding whether it's a need or a simple want. So we asked Aurovillians to categorize needs. We gave them a list of different things and a list of different things that could categorize as basic needs, and these were the results. So as you've already mentioned, food, clothing, electricity, water, education were amongst the top. Very understandable, right? How about we use this chart and these results to understand what has been done well in Auroville? What are things that Auroville as a community is covering in terms of basic needs? So electricity, for example, is provided by the community for free, at least to residents in the very inner residential areas, for free. And then education and entertainment are two of the most fascinating or most prosperous things in Auroville. The fact that there is an array of different cultural activities that has a free door walk-in policy. And education, I mean, I personally, having been a beneficiary of the very fruitful educational system in Auroville, I have nothing bad to say about it. From primary school to early high school, I had the choice to whether attend a school that was more academically inclined versus creatively inclined, and that choice is fundamental. And then we have clothing, the basic need of clothing that is for most Aurovillians or many Aurovillians covered by the free store. Free store is a service in Auroville that you go to if you have clothes to share with others, and take if you need something. And then food, interestingly for food, we have a collective called PTDC, Produce Distribution Center. So it's not that food is given to people for free. We're not at that stage. I think there is a lack of people working in the primary agricultural sector in Auroville for that to happen anytime in the near future. But PTDC is a very cool collective where each member pays a monthly contribution, and the pooling of these contributions is used to buy things buy products and produce at the lowest cost. And what's more interesting about this collective is that a person can walk into PTDC and there are no price tags to be seen. So it's, your mindset is not like, oh, that's 200 rupees, that's 300 rupees, I need this and that, I need like, oh, what can I afford? Instead, it's really fostering a mentality like, okay, given that there are no price tags and I don't really need to question the value of things, what is it that I really need, right? It's so, in theory, people should walk in and consciously consume what they need. So yeah, how about we use this chart to understand why are there still so many cash transactions in Auroville? Well, let's take the example of petrol, cell phone, internet, and domestic helpers. This is again what we can consider as relative basic needs, right? So petrol may be a basic need for me, a person who doesn't have an electric vehicle, who's also, practically speaking, too lazy to cycle around the community. And cell phone and internet may be a basic need for some young people who are very dependent on social media and technology in general, whereas other people in Auroville, the elderly generation, might think that, like, I hate Wi-Fi, I want to be away from that. You know, it's not good for my health. Domestic helpers is a tricky one, right? Because, of course, we're all fit. Most of us, at least, are fit. But there is a, demographically speaking, a group of people in Auroville that are senior citizens that need actual physical assistance to complete chores and certain activities within the household, right? So again, it's very relative to the individual. But these relative needs are not provided by Auroville. I mean, petrol, you need to go outside and pay in cash to buy, right? And then cell phone, I mean, I don't think we have, as far as I am aware, a cell phone provider or a smartphone manufacturer in Auroville. Internet, of course not. And domestic helpers are mostly people from the surrounding bioregion. So here I want to ask you how you, in the crowd, would categorize Auroville's economy. Some popcorn style, some terms. Chaotic. Hybrid, mixed, unsustainable. Okay, all very valid points. So in the survey, we managed to see two polarizing views. So the idealists say that Auroville's economy is pioneering and that it is humanist, right? So there's a focus on the human value and not on materialistic goods and resources. And that it's experimental, that you have the means to try out things and fail, right? Try out things that you can't really outside in the real world. And that overall, the community was not greed-driven. On the other hand, some people thought that Auroville's economy was unequal, that there was not a good distribution of wealth and resources, and that it was overly bureaucratic, that to actually talk the talk and then walk the walk was incredibly hard because you have to go to meetings, there is this and that, there's too much talking without the action. And others also believe that Auroville was tending towards capitalism and that overall the economy was unsustainable. What we can see from this very two polarizing viewpoints is that there is a part of Auroville, a part of the economy that builds itself on socialism, the idea of barter, and that it fosters a very gift economy. But on the other hand, there is room for improvement, right? Because there was a lot of people who believe that Auroville's moving towards capitalism and commercialism. But why is that the case? Well, two of many other contributing factors could be the recent introduction of GST, which is a new tax in India, and the general inflation here. So when you have these two things, it inevitably leads to higher costs of living. And what happens when things are not as affordable as they used to be? That things that were 10 rupees back in the 60s is now 400 rupees. Yeah? Well, Auroville is a community that is very proud of having this free exchange of goods and services, language classes, swimming lessons, watsu, yoga, etc. But what about the people who are offering these goods and services? When now they suddenly face higher the cost of living, do they still want to offer this for free? When now they face the pressure to have more money, to have access to more income, right, to pay for their need, to cover their needs, is there a shrink in the pool of things that are being offered? Are we on the road to a pay-up mentality? What I'm trying to highlight here is that there is room for improvement, not only in the context of Auroville, but around the world. So the question then is, how do we cover individual needs? And when we're exploring the concept of UBI, how do you actually fund a basic income? So one of the most conventional ways to do it, and this is a practice that's being done around the world, is taxation, right? So tax people based on their income, pool that, and then distribute it. Or promote the economic sector, the commercial sector, grow the economy by promoting, supporting the economy, incubating startups, encouraging entrepreneurship. What does that do when you grow the economy? You have more revenues, and then you tax the revenues. So then you have more money to then distribute to the people. So when it comes to taxation, there is currently talks in Auroville of a land tax or land contribution. Contribution is the word that we refer to as it's a replacement word. It's a substitute word for taxation in Auroville. So what about land contribution, which would mean, should an Aurovillian contribute more based on the amount of land he or she occupies? And in similar line of thought, should an Aurovillian pay more contribution if he or she has 3 vehicles or that produces more carbon emissions, right? So this approach focuses on generating wealth and then distributing the accumulated wealth or money or resources, this pool, and distributing equally amongst community members. But you see, what is an alternative approach? I'm young, many would say naive, optimistic. I'd like to find new ways, new angles, new perspectives to try out something new, even if it fails. It's not about success or failure. It's about trying something new, to paving new paths, to paving new paths for people who are to come, paths that have never been taken before. What about focusing on what already exists? What do I really mean by this? Are there certain things within the community, in society, that are being underutilized? Are there resources that are not being put to good use? And that by identifying this so-called underutilized resources and circulating them in an economy, that certain needs can be met. So here I want to ask, what are some underutilized resources in the world? Water, biomass, very good. Land, very good. Any others? Okay. How about shit, feces, poo, dung, whatever you may call it? So here I would like to introduce the Science Walden Institute. It's an institute that it's a research institute based in South Korea that I've been personally affiliated with. At the heart of the Science Walden Institute is the following principle or philosophy, that waste is not waste, right? That we need to challenge like what we understand as waste. So what they managed to do here at the Institute is perfect a technology that converts feces into something that has value, compost, bioenergy, right? Poo that we've grown up thinking that just smells terrible, that we should run away from and we should not touch. That they managed at the Institute create a technology that really creates something value of something that is labeled always as waste. And I resonated personally very deeply with this, because how many other things do we see as shit, right? How many things do we disregard and not give a second glance to because we've been taught like that, because we've never put that effort. So here, I just want to, again, just challenge you guys to identify what is an underutilized resource. Because as I've said, as the Science Walden Institute has taught me, poo is a very valuable resource. So this is how I've come to see it. How do you turn shit into gold? Or let's say in more polite way to word it would be, from waste to something that has real value. So that now that you've been sprinkled with a little bit of masala to challenge your perception, I want to ask, what are some underutilized resources in Auroville, right? So as you can see up here, two of the main things that we identified from the survey results was human resources and space and infrastructure. So in Auroville, we have a diversity of people with different skill sets and talent. The question is not whether people are willing to offer and like practice their talent and like share something with the community, because I believe that there is a tremendous amount of goodwill in Auroville. But the question is, is there a platform on which they can place their offerings for everyone to see? Or is it all just reliant on word of mouth, right? On the other hand, we have space like Town Hall, Bhartniva schools that can be used as a conference space for collaboration, for experimentation, for discussion, for workshops. But the question is, does everyone have access to that? Me, having been fortunate to grow up here, I can call an Aurovillian that I know, an Aurovillian that saw me as a child growing up. Hi, Min, I really need a conference room tomorrow at the Sire building because I want to give a presentation. Okay, Dambi, sure, booked. I'll see you tomorrow. What if an Auroville volunteer from abroad, right, who is arguably even more eager to engage with the community and contribute in his or her own way, makes the same call? Okay, yeah, sure, okay, well, 1,000 rupees. Is that fair? I think I'd like to ask you why these resources are being underutilized in the first place. Again, from the survey, we identified that on a community level, there is this general sense of financial insecurity and mistrust. It's not a very good starting point for people to take care of each other, obviously. And I think on a global level, scarcity, that things are scarce and that we don't have abundance as we live and breathe, this idea that we need more and that we don't have enough, right? Things are like that we need that more is more and not less is more. It's a phenomenon that we are conditioned to believe in growing up in modern day society. So the question is, do community members in Auroville have equal access to this free exchange of goods and services, right? What would you say? No, not that much, probably, yeah. So hands up for anyone who said no. Okay, I think we're all on the same page. So then I want to ask everyone, how can we create a community that thrives off collaboration, camaraderie, and collectivism, the triple C's. I want to now paint a picture. I am quite a visual person, so I understand problems better when I have a visual overview. So think about it like this. In the nucleus of the community, we have long-time Aurovillians, people who've been here from day one, breaking their backs to build a macho mandir, people who have turned this barren piece of desert land into a green jungle, right? So what are they going to feel amongst each other? They're going to feel like we're friends, we'll take care of each other, right? Outside on the second nucleus, we have newly Aurovillians. Some have done exceptionally well in integrating and really being a part of the community. Others are still finding their footing, still trying to build their personal network. And outside of that, we have newcomers, who are people who come to Auroville, they feel inspired by its vision, and they're trying to find ways to engage with the community, to ask the question like, is this where I want to be? Is this a place for me to really tap into my potential? And then, as electrons to a nucleus, we have volunteers in random chaos and just like coming in and out, right? And outside of that, we have guests. So why have I painted this picture for you? What is so fundamental about this? I want to highlight with this that there is within this community an invisible yet very prevalent division of personal network. And depending whether you are in the inside of the nucleus or let's say the outside, like in the outer orbit, you have a different access to these services and goods, whether it be space or whether it be a massage, whether it be a language lesson, whatever it may be, right? So where do we go from here, from this invisible divide? We want to go from here to here, where obviously the divide is not evident, that whether you're a newcomer, newly Aurovillian, or a long-time Aurovillian, it doesn't make a difference, because we as a community want to come together to help each other out. And what about the volunteers? It's funny, the German volunteers who I've had the opportunity to interact with the past few weeks, they are all working, for the most part, in the primary sector. They're the ones working in farms, growing our vegetables and planting trees, where me, an Auroville youth, is here giving a presentation. I'm not breaking a sweat. My hands are not bleeding. I'm not under the scorching sun. So what about the volunteers? Let's be kind to them. Let's appreciate their help and effort, right? So I always give this example. Me, having grown up in Auroville, I get to have access to these very different healing events, right? So every Wednesday at Unity Pavilion, there is this sound bath therapy where you go, you lie down, you're immersed in a pool of different vibrations, and you wake up feeling just rejuvenated. So I walk in, I can lie down, no problemos, right? But what if a German Weltwärts volunteer who worked the whole day at a farm goes in? 400 or 500 rupees. Is that fair? Is the question I want to raise. So we want to also include the volunteers. Now it's time to think outside the box. I want to now revisit the concept of basic income, right? So on the left-hand side, we have the traditional mode of basic income, which again, let's go through the steps. Cash payments given to citizens. How do you generate the wealth? Through taxation, through promoting the commercial sector. You pool that and you give it as equal dividends to the people, right? So what is the focus of traditional basic income? As the name suggests, it is focused on basic needs. But now, I talked about how optimistic and naive I am, right? How about we find a new way? Is there a different mode of basic income? Let's call it circular basic income, right? And it would be a completely different approach, right? So let's say we create a virtual network, a virtual platform. And simply by being a user on this platform, you are endowed with certain virtual credit. What do you do with the virtual credit? You can use it to access underutilized goods and services that we've been talking about for the past 5-10 minutes. So the approach would be different from basic income, from traditional basic income, which is generation. Circular basic income would be more recirculation, right? And here, again, I want to really highlight one more point. Circular basic income, which is largely being, or is giving people the access to underutilized goods, is it going to cover fundamental basic needs? No. And why is that the case? It's because we're talking about underutilized. If things are underutilized by majority of people, it means that it's not covering a basic need, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be underutilized in the first place. So now we're focusing more on relative needs, right? We talked about it. Needs that are tied to the individual. Okay, I know this is a lot to digest right now. So let's, again, try to understand the philosophical aspect. So traditional basic income builds itself on scarcity, right? Because it really gives people the means to consume more. You get cash payments, which you can use to consume more. And in today's society, in modern economics, consumption is still based on the idea of scarcity. If we believe that everything, there's enough for everyone already, you don't need to encourage anyone to consume more, buy more, produce more, right? And I'm not saying there's something wrong with traditional basic income. I am an advocate, and I hope one day an activist regarding this, this movement. But circular basic income has a very philosophically different perspective. It assumes, what if, as we're living, breathing today, as I'm talking to you, as this recording is being made, there's abundance around us, right? And instead of giving people means to consume more, to buy another t-shirt, to buy another blanket, to buy more food, how about we assume that there is already enough, that maybe my neighbor may have a jacket that is just rotting away in his closet, and that maybe there's a person who has 3 blankets and doesn't need one, right? The fact that there is abundance, and all it takes for the community as a whole to be well off is to recirculate these goods. And again, it's not enabling consumption, but it is enabling sharing. So now let's introduce the virtual platform on which circular basic income could be given, right? In the context of Auroville, let's call it the Human Unity Platform, and let's give the community credit the name of Aura, right? So how would it work? Let's go through the model. So each user on this Human Unity Platform, just by joining the network, would be endowed with 10 auras unconditionally. Does that sound familiar? Yes, because it really it applies the concept of basic income. That you, for being a human being, are given means to cover your needs, right? Second, the value of Aura, this community credit, would decrease 7% in value. Why is that important? Because we live in a society where we want to accumulate wealth. We want to save things. We want to save money in the hopes to get something bigger, better, faster, right? But this is not what we're trying to do. We're focusing on circulation. We want to make sure that people don't accumulate their auras, that like they hope that with 1,000 aura they'll have access to something better. No, we want to encourage real-time spending. We want to obey the mentality of use it or lose it. And again, it's incentivizing real-time spending and disincentivizing saving. But more than that, it's really reshaping the perception of money. Money is very misconstrued in terms of how we perceive it, right? We see money as something that has actual intrinsic value, when in fact, it's just a token. It's just almost something symbolic, a medium of exchange, something that is supposed to facilitate transactions. I think personally for me, where money took a wrong turn, or where money induced, let's say, misconstrued perception, was when you could make money from money, when interest was introduced in modern economics, right? And you could now make money from money, and now suddenly it had its own value. But back in the days when coins were being used as a means to exchange, it's because it was supposed to facilitate transactions. And that is what we're trying to tap into with this virtual platform that Science Walden has been working on. And when you receive 10 Aura as circular basic income every day, you are required to share 10. Share all of it. No, I'm kidding. Share 3 of it with others in the user network. So you receive 10 by logging on, and then the next step would take you to an overview of the different users on this network, and you share it with 3 others. And why is that important? Why not keep it for yourself? Again, circulation, circulation, circulation. I'm a very social extrovert person, right? So I see it like this. Anything in life, a healthy organism needs circulation, needs movement. If I stay at home in my bed a whole week, technically, yeah, it's good for maybe my body because I do push myself to the limit, but I find myself in an incredibly depressed, very low state. It's because there's no movement, there's no circulation. And again, money that stays still, resources that remain still, right? That leads to what we call inequality in today's society. For any organism, including an economy, to be healthy, things need to move. I'm sure you have questions regarding why 10 auras, why sharing 3, and why 7% decrease in value. These are figures that, of course, could be adopted according to conditions, and depending on the user behavior and user feedback, this is something we need to work on. But to provide some insight regarding the 7%, it's because 7% is a figure that would result in no auras at the end of the month. So by the end of the month, the auras that you have today will be gone. So let's revisit the Human Unity platform. I apologize that most of the writing on this demonstration is in Korean. As I said, it's an endeavor. It's a project that's been initiated by the Science Walden Institute in Ulsan, South Korea. So an English version of the application will be available to us. So here we would have the aura log, a log of all the auras that you've been endowed with daily, the overview of the depreciating trend of your aura, and how many auras you've shared with others, how many auras you've received from others. So just an overview of that. And here, this is how posting an offering would look like. So let's say I want to give a massage because I'm trained to be a masseuse, right? There are many of those in Auroville. And instead of giving it always to my neighbor or to my partner, how about giving it to someone I don't know? So I put it, let's say, a massage for 2 aura, right? And the minute you put in the attributes and create this offering, a QR code is generated, right? And when a different person wants to access this offering, or let's say book it, he or she just has to scan the QR code. How about the Aura Place? Aura Place, think of it as a marketplace on this virtual platform. So you would have 3 different categories: products, activities, and products, services, and cultural activities. So what if you have things on your shelf that is just accumulating dust, an extra stapler you really don't need, right? I have, I think, around 10 beach towels that is just rotting downstairs in my cellar. What about tools in your storeroom that you don't use often, right? Put it on the Aura Place, because for all you know, somebody may really need it. What about services? Again, in my example, it's about massage, right? And in the case of Jonas, he may be an excellent barber. He cuts his own hair, which is very impressive. And there are so many other services. Again, tapping into human resource being an underutilized resource in Auroville. There are so many offerings that I feel the community members would be willing to offer, right? But now we have a platform where you can actually exercise your goodwill. And third but not least, we have cultural activities. This is a sensitive one because, of course, there are already free cultural activities for most people in Auroville, right? There are activities such as let's say like concerts. Concerts are free for everyone to attend, right? But again, I want to refer back to the sound bath therapy at Unity Pavilion, right? Which is a cultural activity in a way. I can walk in, bathe in beautiful vibrations for an hour, but a volunteer, a German volunteer, cannot. So I think when it comes to cultural activities, we as community members have to be aware of the fact there are certain hard-working members, such as German volunteers, the French civil servant volunteers, who are contributing to the community at large, but they don't have access to these cultural activities. How about an aura space, right? So we've identified space as underutilized resource. So how about if you have an overview of the dates and the time slots during which space is free, and all you had to do to access and book that space is spend your aura, right? And again, I want to remind you, because it's a question we get often is, but what is the value of aura in real life? The value of aura is only determined by, first of all, the users, and that it has actually no value in rupees or dollars or euros. It is a completely virtual currency, a community credit, right? That can be only used on the Human Unity platform. So it's important for us to dissociate and de-link from the economic system that is still tied to the Indian rupee. It's very difficult to understand, but I'm hoping that in the Q&A session, we will have more time to really address these concerns and talk and really come together to work on this project together to answer these big question marks, right? And then what about aura culture? This is a feature that is quite interesting. So of course, we want to still keep most of the exhibitions and the shows and the concerts in Auroville for free, but artists do have this reputation for struggling, for not having enough, not being compensated enough for their work, for how they're sharing with the community. How about showing appreciation to these artists by giving them aura, right? So here, there is no network. This is not a fixed solution. This is not a complete package that I'm giving to you, serving on a platter, saying, hey, this is a filet mignon, it's gonna be delicious. No, there is still a lot of cooking to be done. We still have to come up with the right recipe for the dish to taste good, right? And I see it like this: just as a brain needs the neural pathways to make sense of data, to make sense of information, to store things in our memory, we need to create pathways on a virtual network too, right? We need to give implementation scenarios. We need to add offerings to this pool, to this virtual platform for it to work. How good would this platform be if nobody in the community is willing to share something from their side, be it a product, good, or a service, right? So this is where I'm reaching out to you, especially the youth out there, the youth who are still young enough to question, to try out new things, to not be afraid of failure. How about we come together to explore, to brainstorm, to converge our efforts, to come up with different scenarios, to encourage a giving more than taking philosophy. So I want to say this. I truly believe that 95% of the problems in this world, be it environmental, relationship problems, personal problems, can be solved by giving more than taking attitude. When we learn to give more to the environment, to Mother Earth, than we take from it, then like the amount that we're abusing nature, right? That when we are taking we're living that jet setter life and taking that flight and taking from the environment, it's important to also understand, how can I give back to it? Do I plant a tree, right? That kind of mentality. I think we do grow up in a society that makes us question a lot. What am I getting out of this? What am I getting out of this education? What am I getting out of this deal? What am I getting out of this relationship? What am I getting for my input to this project? It's very selfish and it's very egoistic, right? But it's okay. It's important to be focused on the self. Self-centeredness is not necessarily bad, but it has to be balanced with also sense of collective overview and collective also input and social responsibility. So what I'm trying to really encourage with this type of social economic project is fostering a more giving attitude, right? So instead of approaching a situation, asking what do I get out of it, how about asking the question, what can I give to it? So I work in tech development, so I've worked with apps, app developers, and when you're building apps, I think you have to answer the question, what are users getting out of it? Because there's no way that a user who's on the App Store or the Google Play Store goes to their phone and doesn't ask the question before downloading the app, like what am I getting out of this? Like how is this making my life easier? So I want to change the mentality, and I want to reshape our attitude to think, what can I offer? How am I contributing? So instead, we have to change the what and hows here, right? From what am I getting out of it? How am I benefiting? To what can I offer? How can I contribute? I fully realize this is incredibly idealistic, and it is really like the success of something like this, of an endeavor like this, will be very reflective of the social consciousness and an awareness that we manage to embody and practice. So on this note, I would like to just end this presentation by thanking you all for being present and humbly asking you for a lending hand in developing, expanding, and growing this virtual network. Thank you for your time, and I now open up the floor for any questions.